You or me?
Yeah, you are. I guess you get to start this off. Is there a volume thing on this one, or
No,
just hold it close, eh?
Hey, welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome Terry Woolsey is here to fill us in on what's going on in the province of Alberta and Canada. Some good, some bad. Appreciate y'all coming. We have sign-up sheets in the back for those that haven't signed up that want to sign up. And for those that don't want to sign up, it'll be a good information session. We'll go from there. Thanks, Terry.
All right. Okay, first question that I have for you. By show of hands, how many here have been to a presentation on Alberta independence? Okay, how many haven't been? So we're about 50-50, okay? That's great, because that helps keep people informed, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to inform people so they can make intelligent decisions on what's going on without, I wouldn't say biased, but without an unbiased opinion also, so that you can see what's going on. All right, I'm going to jump right into this, and as you all know, we're talking about what would happen if Alberta became independent, and what the consequences of that would be, and what the consequences are if we don't. And that's what we're really looking at. The question I have up here, it reads Alberta independence up at the top, and it says, how much is freedom worth? And I've heard questions from all kinds of different people that say, you know, I won't support independence because my grandfather fought in the Second World War for Canada. And I say, yes, and so did mine. And I lost people in that war, and they fought for my independence, my freedom, so that I can be in charge of myself as well as responsible for other people, to educate them so that they can hold this country together using good principles and sound doctrine. Uh-oh, what happened? Oh, I just got to hit my button here, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. All right, so the second question is, are we free? And that's an important one to consider. Or are we in a form of bondage to the governments? And the third question is, how many government agencies or how many levels of government do you think you need to have to tell you what to do? Or in the converse, you probably thought at one time that you could dictate to the government what they should do and they would follow the will of the people. Now, is that the case today? All right. I believe that it's not. And I don't believe that I need more than one level of government that may be segmented a little bit. I don't believe I need 4 or 5 different levels of government to tell me, 4 levels of government to tell me what I need to be doing. I believe I need to be telling them what I think should be done, and then in a democratic way to make sure that they follow those instructions. How did Canada begin? You're pointing up in the air? No? Oh. Let's talk about that. In 1670 and 1874, Canada came to be. Charles II sold to the Hudson Bay Company a big part of Canada. And if you can see that map up there, the dark part is the part that he sold to the Hudson Bay Company. And part of that was down into what we know today as the U.S. So it encumbered that. Later on, come on.
That was all lands that drained into the Hudson Bay?
Yes, that's right. Later on in 1803, before before Canada came to be, the U.S. bought a huge chunk of land called the Louisiana Purchase. And that was in 1803. And then the U.S. government and the Canadian government at that time, which was the British government and not Canada, came to an agreement to do a land exchange. So if you look at the white area up there, you'll see the Louisiana Purchase went all the way up into Saskatchewan and here into southern Alberta, all the way up to Lethbridge. So we were basically a colony of France in 1803.
Yeah, but that was all the lands that drained into the Mississippi or Missouri, wasn't it?
Yes, for the most part, that's true. The Missouri River ran right down there, and that was the border of the Louisiana Purchase. Then in 1905, after most all the other provinces had become part of the Confederation of Canada after 1867, Alberta was brought into the Confederation without consultation. And they've never consulted with Alberta about that even yet. So it was just a stroke of the pen and you're part of Canada. Now, was that good or was that bad?
Okay. Maybe just to back up a bit about the how the Senate numbers got originally rolled out. So in 1867, right?
The B&A Act,
There
yep.
was Upper Canada
And Lower Canada.
and Lower Canada,
That's correct.
and each of them were given 24 seats in the Senate.
Well, we'll go to that right away here.
Okay.
Yep, you bet. And don't be afraid to jump in and correct me. I don't know everything, even though some people think I do. And here you go, just what you're talking about. Originally, the red and the yellow and the dark yellow and the light blue was Eastern Canada, but the first part was divided up into Upper and Lower Canada. Now you'd think Upper Canada would have been Quebec because it's higher up, but that was Lower Canada, and the other way around was Upper Canada. I almost said that backwards. And they decided under the B&A Act that, and they legislated it, they created it in the legislation, so that's the way it is even today, that Ontario would get 24 seats in the Senate. Quebec would get 24 seats in the Senate. Even at that time, the population was not even, but they still did that. And then the Maritimes, they got New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and PEI got 24 seats also. And then Newfoundland got 6 seats. So in total, 78 seats in the Senate controlled the final say on any legislation that was passed by the House of Commons. So as you know, they put forward a bill in the House of Commons, they pass it, then it goes to the Senate reviews it. If they want changes, they send it back to the House of Commons, and they go back and forth until they come to an agreement. So we know that 101 Liberals are in 101 seats are in the Senate right now, and there's only 4 people that are considered to be conservative in nature, and none of those are in Western Canada.
Why don't they abolish the Senate?
That's a good question, and that's why I talk about how many levels of government do you really need? How functional are they? Are they elected? Do they represent their area by population, or do they just represent it because they've got that authority and they deal with it? Do they have a seat for life or until they're 75? Is that fair? There's all kinds of questions that go around the Senate. And many of you will already know, we tried years ago in the 80s to get a triple E Senate, which is effective, elected, and
Equal.
equal. Very good. So it equals off and balances the government. And that never happened. So we had the Charlotte Town Accord, we have the Meech Lake Accord, trying to change the Constitution. Now, in order to change the Canadian Constitution, you have to have 7 out of 10 provinces agree on the change, plus 50, that has to represent at least 50% of the voting population. What are the odds?
Never happen, because some of those little provinces with little people will never be fair.
So Quebec gets a veto, Terry.
Pardon me?
Quebec has a veto.
Yes, it has a veto also.
Even
Yeah.
though they never signed it.
They never signed on to any of those agreements, so they've declared themselves independent already, and nobody said boo about it.
So Terry, you kind of touched on it before. So the Maritimes wanted to be a part of Canada, so they negotiated their way in.
That's
They
correct.
said, if we're coming in, we want 24 seats, like Upper and Lower Canada. So that's what they gave them.
Yes,
And they split them up.
right.
And then when they decided to bring in Western Canada, they said, okay, we'll put 24 seats out there. That's why the 4 Western provinces
Got 6 each.
got 6 each.
That's
And
correct.
that's baked into the Constitution.
And then there's 3 in the Northwest Territories. And that's how we get the odd number. Any more questions on that? Do you think that's just on the basis of that, is that a fair system or is that a rigged system?
That is very unfair and one of the many reasons to not be part of that color map.
Right, so everything else aside, loyalty, the Union Jack, the Maple Leaf flag, any of that stuff, all that is, put that aside and look at it and say, are you going to be treated fair? Or can you be treated fair? And have you been treated fair? And we're going to go into that next. Here is the House of Commons. Similar situation. The East has 232 seats, and the West and the Northwest Territories have 111. The night of the election, when the vote count hits Manitoba, it's over. It's already decided your vote doesn't count. Do you have representation then?
It's a slow process to do it by population. And there is so many clauses in there. There's 22 MPs that should not even be there.
Okay.
Because of Senate clause, Quebec clause, grandfather clause, Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, that's the biggest one. All right, so all I'm pointing out here is that the system was never put together so that the changes could be necessary to adapt to the Confederation as it grew and developed. Sifton, I don't know if you know who he is, he was one of the originators of this and the Constitution, and he said, take it from the West so that we can develop our industries in the East. And that's exactly what they've done over the last 120, 40 years. They've taken from the West and they've developed their industries in the East. So whatever he said has come to pass. Judges, the judicial system, mostly appointed, again, by the ruling party. So when Trudeau got in, he replaced a whole bunch of guys that came out with his buddies, and so they control the judicial system. So if you go and you say, I want to make a change, they're going to find a reason. And you know, a good lawyer is like a good accountant. You go into the accountant and you say, listen, I want to save some of my money on my taxes. How can I do that? And he says, I got to ask you a question. He says, what's 1 and 1? 1 plus 1. And the guy says, 2. He says, okay, that's fair. He goes over and he closes the blinds down. He says, I can show you how that's 3. So that's how the system is set up right now. They manipulate it any way to their benefit that they want. You can't win in court. We have have proven that recently. Let's talk about equalization now. Equalization,
You talked about the Supreme Court.
yes,
Don't the West have 2 seats?
they do.
Canada has,
All appointed by the East. Yeah, but we do have 2 seats that represent
for Western Canada.
for Western Canada. That's right.
The rest of the country has 7.
That's correct. All right. So we could look at the gross domestic product, but that would say we're out of balance, and we're going to kind of look at that right now. Everybody familiar with equalization? What it means? Anybody doesn't know what it means? Basically, it boils down to this. The have provinces take their excess and give it to the have-not provinces, okay? The rules for equalization are skewed like the House of Commons and the Senate and the judiciary. So for example, let's take Quebec. Quebec does not include their hydro in their income to say that they're a have province. It makes them a have-not province. So since 1962, over 600 billion with a B dollars has been transferred by Alberta to the federal government, who distributes wherever they think is necessary. And the rules are so fickle that they can do that.
Mostly to Liberal ridings
That's correct. And to Quebec.
or floor councillors.
Yeah, so every year Alberta overpays in equalization payments approximately $40 billion. And we get back, can you see that?
Goose egg.
Not 3, no, 0. We get back 0 of equalization. Now we also pay federal tax of about $70 billion. And we get back about 20 billion of that in distribution for services that the federal government should provide. Military, police forces, parks, and those are the basic 3 that we've got. If they go beyond that, they've really gone beyond their scope. So what happens is Quebec has received $327 billion of equalization payments, not including tax, not including the other stuff. Nova Scotia 120, New Brunswick 95, Manitoba 87, reverse those, Newfoundland 35, Nunavut 26, Saskatchewan 20, Alberta 0, BC 0, and Ontario $42 billion. Supposed to be our industrial center that generates income for the government. This is what it looks like. Is equalization equal or fair? And that's the question we have to answer. Do we continue to keep paying our money out in equalization payments when our provincial budget is overdrawn on their bank account last year by $6.8 billion? So we're borrowing money to send it out east, and we're paying the debt off, which is increasing the problem and making it worse. An independent Alberta, what would that look like? And this is just an example, but a real one if it happened. If you were making $78,000 a year gross, you would pay $47,000 in deductions and benefits to the federal and provincial government. So your take-home pay would be $31,000 at the end of the day. In an independent Alberta, if we just took a 10% tax, eliminated the federal tax, you would take home $70,000 on a $78,000 income. If I offered you that kind of pay raise, would you be interested? Or do you think you should just give it away, the $38,000 or whatever it is, $47,000 in deductions? For me, The answer is pretty simple. Why do I have to pay that amount of money to other people that are no better than I am, that are taking it from the West and giving it to the East? Danielle Smith, is she listening? Is she helping? Did you know that 65% of UPC members are people that support independence? So that 950,000 plus votes that she got last time around when she was elected as a premier of the province, 65% of the people that voted for her were in favor of independence. Her predecessor, Kenny, said, we need to have a referendum on equalization payments. That referendum took place in 2019. The result of that referendum was 62% of Albertans agreed that we shouldn't pay equalization any longer. Has that changed? Will it change? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to change. There's no way they're going to give that up. Most Albertans know we don't have a vote in federal elections. They understand that. For that reason, many of them don't vote. But this referendum that's coming up, where we have the signatures in place already that meet the criteria, gives everybody the opportunity to vote on equalization. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would think that 62% at least would vote to have the removal of equalization payments. And the only way that that can be done is if we sever our ties with the federal government and go on our own and cut those equalization payments off from home. Will it be easy? They're going to do everything they can to keep their sugar daddy intact. And we have to be able to stand up, take responsibility so that they understand that this is our province. We are Canadians. We'll always be Canadians. And we may have the opportunity to save the rest of Canada as it's in a sinking ship. This last two governments have put us into debt, $1.2 trillion. In 1955, John Diefenbaker, when he was the Prime Minister of Canada, you know what his national debt was? 0. Ever since the Liberals took over, Trudeau came in, Trudeau Sr. and Trudeau Jr. and all the rest of them, they've run the bill way up. They print money. What does that do when they print money? What does it cause? Inflation, absolute inflation. In 1962, that's right, I bought a house. In 1970, I bought a house. It was a duplex in Calgary. I paid $14,000 for that duplex. Both sides. $14,000. I had a mortgage on there that was a 25-year term at about 2.75% interest. Now, that's not even a down payment on that same property. How are our kids and grandkids going to survive this if we don't make some changes? And I can give you some proposals as to what those changes might be. When do we get our say? When do we tell the government what to do instead of the government telling us what to do? If I had a manager running one of my businesses and he did that, how long do you think he would be working for me? Not very long. About as long as it took me to get to the door to tell him to get out. And that's what we have to do. We have to take a stand. Because if you're not in control, they're going to control you. There are a number of bills that they've passed already that are just scary. If you understand bondage, many people anciently thought when they were paying 20% tax, they were in bondage. They raised a banner and they put it up on this banner and it said, "My faith, my family, and my freedom, that's what I'm fighting for." And now it's come full circle. We're back to that banner. That's the motto of the independence movement: faith, family, and freedom. And why do we do that? Because it gives good values. When I was growing up, I'd go to A&W, which just came into being, and I could buy a hamburger and a milkshake for 25 cents. How much does that cost you now? 15 bucks? Probably, yeah. Plus tax.
Terry, how old are you anyway?
I can't remember. All right. I'm getting older than I want to be. What does an independent Alberta look like? Now this is not cast in stone. This is what we perceive. I currently have in my possession a new constitution for Alberta, because that's going to be necessary. And it'll be debated, and you will decide, the people will decide. I say, if you teach people correct principles, they can govern themselves. You don't have to be told what to do. I love Jordan Peterson when he came out with his book called the 12 Rules of Life. And if you read that book, the bottom line is we have to take responsibility for ourselves first. And in order to do that, by taking responsibility, it means you have a duty to yourself, you have a duty to your family, you have a duty to your community, you have a duty to your province, and you have a duty to your nation to make sure that you conduct your affairs properly. And if you don't, that's when it goes in the can. How many people can think of how many nations have failed and why they failed? They came into prosperity, and then they hit a pinnacle for some reason, and they went downhill into the tank and disappeared. Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Israelites, China, India, Russia, all of them have risen and they have failed. And the reason they failed is because they failed to be responsible people. When they got up in the morning, they didn't make their bed. That's where it starts. And that's what Jordan Peterson says. If you want to do something that's effective, if you're not making your bed, make it. Take the responsibility, because it starts your day off right. And then he said something that really impressed me, which he said, I was never that religious, but he says, one day I had this idea come to me, and I went, ooh, that's a good idea. And then I thought, where did that idea come from? I had no idea about that before. Where did that come from? He says, I define that as the divine intervention or revelation that every person receives all the time. You just have to be listening. And so if you got that connection, for me, faith is really important. If you're not listening, you're going to stub your toe. In my case, I broke my foot. Okay? But it's because I wasn't listening. And I'll tell you a little story about that. I was building an off-grid cabin out by St. Mary's Dam, and I was building a deck on the front because I was going to put a geothermal underneath it, and I was down to the last sheet of plywood to put on that deck. When I turned around, I had my neighbor behind me, and we picked up that last sheet of plywood to nail it down. I looked over and I said, that's got a sag right there in the one side. Something told me to look over there, so I did. And there was a sag there, and I said, oh, we better fix that before we go any further. Well, let's just put this one sheet down. Well, 2 years later, I'm still limping because that whole thing collapsed. But I heard it, I just didn't act on it. And so I've been a little more diligent about that. Now, I try to listen. When those come, I try to listen and sort them out and make the best decision that I can. And life has been much better since then. And I can still walk, which is amazing. All right, now, enough of my...
Read that screen because I can't see it.
Do what?
Read the other screen.
Yeah, the 9 points, or there was the one before this.
Oh. Yeah, it says one function of government, one functional government controlled from the bottom up, not the top down. So a functional government is controlled from the bottom, not the top. Who's the bottom?
We are.
Okay. Who should be the top?
Well,
We need to invert that pyramid.
who we put in,
Pardon me?
who we vote in, or who we put in.
Okay, and that's a good point, because I'm going to touch on that, and I think I have a solution for that. Because, you know, where a little bit of power is given, it tends to corrupt people. So if today, if our MLA and our MP and their caucus and their parties decide, and they're in power, and they decide they want a pay raise, do you approve it? No. But if I'm the boss, I should at least get a say if they get a pay raise or a bonus. It's not the case anymore. They control. They're on top of the pyramid. If you take and reverse the pyramid and turn it upside down, that's the way the structure should be. People should be on top of it, and those that are working for the government, the people, should be working for the people, not for their benefit, not to enrich them. All right. 110% tax. That's what's being proposed right now in order to clear off the debt, bring in the equalization payments, bring home everything that we can, and clear the debt off so we're debt-free. We believe we can do it under 5 years. They're talking 1 year, but I say 5, just because I want to try to be realistic.
Sorry to interject. Is 10% realistic to clear off the debt but still, you know, take care of our own education and healthcare and all sort of stuff? Like, that's what a lot of our taxes go to. So
You know, we're just talking federal tax right now, because we would be a nation, we'd be our own state, so it's a federal tax, would be 10% to start with. Then you've got other things that you need to have. You need to have roads, you need to have a military, you need to have a police force, you need to have education system, you don't need, but you can have health care if you're willing to pay for it and structure it so that it works. And that's going to take time, and that's why I use that 5-year period, a transition period, where it's not going to happen overnight. And in fact, what will happen if we all vote, 62% at least, vote for independence? In the morning when you get up, what will have changed?
Carbon tax, gone. GST, gone.
Okay,
Transfer payments, gone.
okay,
Carney, gone.
Carney gone.
CMP, gone.
Gone, okay. Yeah, all that stuff will be gone, but the day you wake up, it won't be. How do we make that transition is what people ask me. And the transition is this way. If you're in charge, and I'm an MLA or an MP, and hopefully I'm not going to be any of those things. If I am that, and you come and say, okay, we have all these programs, we don't want this. We're going to hold a plebiscite, and we're going to decide what it is that we really want, and we're going to hash it out, and then we're going to come out at the end of that period with what we want. And they may say, yeah, we want universal health care. Okay, well, that tax you're paying on your gas at the pump right now is supposed to have been paying for your health care, but it's not making it. It just keeps going up and up and up and up, and that's because it's controlled by special interest groups. And so we have to sort all that stuff out. That's not going to take place overnight, but it will take place if we take a stand. All right? Free trade are all essential services, is what I'm talking about. All essential services that you deem to be appropriate will be the ones that you put into place. And because I am the MLA, not right now, but hypothetically, you will say to me, this is what you enact in legislation, not what you legislate and enact and then tell me what that is. This is what you enact. And if you don't enact it, it's not going to be a plebiscite. It's not going to be a referendum on removing this person from office. It's going to be, we're going to kick his butt out of the office. Period. You broke the law, you're gone. I'm hiring you to manage the situation so that we don't have to deal with all that stuff all at once and make it way more complicated than it is.